Well, as if resurrection isn't dramatic enough, this week our focus is on outrageous reversals. Outrageous reversals from betrayal to faithfulness to leadership, from being under persecution to being triumphant and in charge. I want to invite you to check the readings with me. From the other one was from being a murderer to being one who brings life. Psalm 30 starts, "Sing praises to the Lord, O you his faithful ones." Sing praises to the Lord, O you his faithful ones. Sometimes Christianity gets painted as the people who are doing the right thing, who are good people, who are always nice. I think this is really unhelpful. I think nice is an unhelpful way for us to understand what righteousness looks like, and in fact can get in the way of us being honest and loving and caring for one another. We have stories of faithfulness and unfaithfulness to check on today. We have Saul, faithful to what he understood the Old Testament to be calling him to. And yet the text describes him as still breathing threats and murder. That sounds jarring to us. And so it should, because this is not the way of Jesus. This is the way of law that precludes life, that shuts down life, that excludes people from life. Yet Saul was being faithful. He was doing what he understood he was called to do. He was protecting the faith. And there's a phrase that we've heard. We've heard as people think that they're protecting the faith by hiding wrongdoing, by protecting pedophiles, by allowing abuse to happen right under our nose. We know it's not okay, but some people who are being faithful will sometimes think that it's better for the church to look nice than it is for us to be righteous. Saul goes from murderous threats to being the one who is being threatened, to being the one who is carrying the gospel of good news with the very people that he was murdering before. Everything is turned upside down. We come to the Revelation, a letter written under threat of death, coded and carrying all sorts of secret messages. It's very mystical and very intriguing, and yet it's meant to be quite simple and straightforward. We have some numbers thrown at us today, and you'll be aware I love pulling out the numbers. We've talked about the number 12 before. Can you tell me where you see the number 12 in the Bible or in common usage? Sorry? Yeah, 12 disciples. 12 tribes of Israel. She was. Yeah, and how many? Little girl who was sick was 12, about 12, and the baskets left over. Once there were 7 baskets left over, and the other time there was 12. So 12 is the number for the whole lot. 7, we come up here twice, 3 times. 7 horns, 7 eyes, 7 spirits. 7 is the number for perfect. So if you have 7 12s or 12 7s, that would be completely perfect. Sorry, the whole lot is made perfect. But we don't see that except in the baskets of bread left over. The complete number is 3, which we also get when Jesus is talking to Peter, and I'll get to that in a sec, but 3 is the number for complete. So 3 sevens is completely perfect. 7 12s is there's perfect provision for the whole lot. So that's the baskets left over. And when we get to the gospel, I'll talk about Peter and his 3. 70 times 7? Yeah. Yep. So what do you think that is? Right. Beyond what I would say was perfect. Yeah. And beyond what any normal person could bear. So we have this series of outrageous reversals, and we have this mystical coded thing. We have threat and we have new life. We have faithfulness and righteousness that stands against nice. And then we have Peter. Peter has betrayed Jesus by denying him. Even though he saw it coming, even though Jesus warned him that it was coming, even though he was right there and had the opportunity, not once, but 3 times to say, yeah, I'm with you. Peter denied Jesus and let his friend down. In the gospel reading, and if you could look with me at it, it's a delightful insight into the post-resurrection time. These guys are overwhelmed by the things that have been happening. They've seen Jesus twice, but they don't know what to do with it. They saw the empty cave, the empty tomb, and they believed, but they didn't know quite what they believed. They're overwhelmed, and Peter goes, I've had it. I'm just going to go fishing. What is fishing? Well, it's comfortable. It's what we were used to. It was the way that we made our living in the past. It was the way that our fathers showed us that we would go on. This is the way that it looks for us now, because that great adventure with Jesus that seemed so full of hope and possibility has finished. It's done. He rose from the dead, but what does that mean for us? Nothing that we can see. And besides which, we let him down. We failed the project. We missed the opportunity. They're out there, and there's this series of a cascading series of events that causes Peter's brain to explode. Because this conversation mirrors one that they had earlier. Remember? No luck fishing tonight, guys? Put your net out the other side. And they're in the fishing boat, having fished all their lives, having learned how to fish from their father, who learned how to fish from his father. And there's a carpenter on the beach saying, let me teach you how to fish. The full net reminds them, yeah, this is the one. They cast it out, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish, and we find out later exactly how many fish there were, which is an economic statement. Each of those fish are sold because there's way too many for them to eat. And despite the number, the nets are not ripped. I don't know if you've been in a place where you've responded to what God has called you to, but so often it can feel like the need the level of need outside our door is so great that there is no way that we can possibly step out faithfully and respond to what Jesus has called us to and not be swamped, overwhelmed, destroyed by the level of need that other people have, and that it seems that Jesus is inviting me to fill. The net is not even torn. It is common practice for fishermen to spend their day in between fishing events to be mending their nets. But these nets with this record catch of huge fish are not even torn. This is for us. Nothing that God calls you to is beyond what He has prepared you for. Nothing is beyond what we and God can do together. And if you feel like you're being called to something or if it is becoming overwhelming, stop. Is this really what God is calling you to? Or am I just not calling on God to carry it away? It could be either of the two. So it has been said to me that I really don't want to go down that path again as a church because that was too much for me to carry. I felt like I had to do, the load was on me or on someone else, and it was just too much for them to carry. And that may well be true. In which case, we need to reassess who we are and what we're doing and ask, is this what God is calling us to do? On the other hand, sometimes that's been said to me, and the person being spoken about says, no, that was fine. I wasn't worried about that at all. I liked doing that. So it's possible for me to assume that you're having a bad time because you're working really hard, and actually you could be thriving because you're doing what God has called you to and you're delighted and excited to be doing it. It's not my job to get in your way or to save you from what you've chosen to take on. It is my job, if I see you struggling, to step in alongside you and work with you to understand, A, what God is calling you to, and B, how we might work it out together. Because as I said yesterday, extraordinary things happen when we work together. This is not an I project. This is a we project. Christianity has never been a journey for an individual on their own. People can come to faith, they can live lives in solitary faith, but the Christianity project, the way, has always been a community event. I mentioned the way. That was the name of this movement before they became Christians, were nicknamed Christians in derisive tone, and Antioch. So not a denomination, not an idea, but a movement of people who went in a particular direction, who were facing in a particular direction of faithfulness, of generosity and hospitality, of forgiveness, of loving enemies. This is the way of Jesus Christ. So Peter's in the boat, and I don't know if you've ever been fishing with nets and big fish and boat tackle and stuff, but it's not the sort of thing you do naked. Like, you can get in all sorts of trouble with ropes and stuff, and I'm not keen on ever going on a boat naked, let alone going fishing naked. This is not the point he's trying to make. When Luke is describing this, he's inviting us to reflect on where Peter is. He was probably wearing a loincloth, right? Just to keep himself safe. However, when it comes to facing Jesus, Peter has lost everything. All pretense is gone. All his covering is gone. All of his bombast is gone. This man is naked and vulnerable and without defense. Why do I say that? Because A, you don't fish naked, but B, he puts on clothes to jump into the water. I mean, who does that? I mean, that's something you might do naked. But the story is telling this so that we understand that this is not about what he was wearing, but rather about where he was emotionally and spiritually when he faced Jesus. Because that setting, that preparation is for us too. This is an invitation to us to recognize that even though we be the betrayer, even though we be the unfaithful, even though we be the unrighteous, even though we've done the worst thing that we could imagine, all that means is that we come without protection to the one who loves us and makes us new. Peter is fully, outrageously, overwhelmingly forgiven and reinstated. The threefold forgiveness. Peter, do you love me? Putting him right back in the place of being a leader and pastor for the people. Now, he still struggles with that. Paul was such a pain in his side. Paul kept on challenging him. John challenged him. They struggled to know what it was to lead this movement that didn't have definite parameters and that was so culturally strange to them that they had to keep reassessing every step along the way. Their mission statement was so far out of their experience that they didn't understand how to deal with it. They were being asked as fishermen to stand up to theologians, being thrown into jail and then busted out by angels. This is not common practice or common experience. This was way beyond them. And Peter had to know that he stood in the right place. Jesus put him there. So when we think about putting someone in their place, we might say, so about that thing that I said that you do, and you said, no, you wouldn't do, and yet you did, and then the rooster crowed, and see, I told you so, that would be putting him in his place, right? But instead of that, Jesus doesn't mention any of that, but takes him back to the very beginning. Takes him back to the beginning where they're eating together. Takes him back to the beginning where they're in the boat and the carpenter's teaching the fishermen how to fish. And takes him back to the beginning when he says, follow me. This is all that is required. Not some great project, but rather follow me. Feeding the sheep, caring for the sheep is all about being invited to take responsibility. But the project is follow me. How is Jesus calling you to follow him as a resurrected follower of the way? What does it mean for you to be a follower of the resurrected Christ? What does it mean to be that person in Paddington? Amanda mentioned that I was audacious enough to pray before the gathering yesterday. It was a bold step, I've got to say. I was intending that it would set the tone for our conversations, but also inviting people to consider that loving our neighbour is an act of worship. And that as we were gathering in this worship space, talking about politics, we were in the presence of God. It's not my job to change them or fix anyone or to fix any of you, but rather to be faithful in following Jesus and inviting people to consider what that might mean for them. Paul didn't know what adventures were before him when he responded to the voice, that blinding light. We don't know what adventures lie before us when we say, I will follow you, Jesus. We do not know what adventures lie before the people of Paddington if they get to know the risen Christ. And so it's not our job to decide whether it's worthwhile, but rather to invite, to live our lives in ways that are so alive that people are drawn to it, that cause them to reconsider the way that they have dismissed or boxed or categorized Jesus and his followers, so that they might too discover that there is a great adventure available to them if they choose to respond faithfully to the living Christ. Amen.